and welcome back to another episode of The Conversation Show, where we have some fun getting divergent in our thinking about some new topics that maybe we haven't implemented in certain places and we've kept only in this like super little silo. And today what we're here to do is break open silos, open a can of worms, shall we say, and where we talk about different themes and how they are in fact related to multi-dimensions of our human experience instead of maybe just one dimension, which is where we're keeping them right now. And today we have a concept that I do think has been kept somewhat in a very artistic arena. We're talking about creativity today. And so there's going to be many different aspects of the creativity conversation that we hit. So if you're here and you have a specific question or that specific and perspective combined into one word, a specific perspective that you would like to share in the chat, please, this is what the lovely chat feature is for. We would love to hear your voices, your experience, your thoughts, your insights, your questions to contribute to the conversation today, because that is the way we all get to learn new things instead of just Tracy and Kim having what is no doubt going to be a lovely conversation. But we love to learn as well. We're both learners, so we love to hear your perspective as well. So get in the chat. Before we kick off into our very creative conversation about creativity, see what I did there? Let's learn a little bit more about my lovely guest today, Kim Westlund. So Kim, can you give us a little overview of who you are and why creativity is important in your world?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, Tracy, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I love the topic of creativity, and like you, I have no doubt that we're going to have fun talking about it. So my name is Kim Westlund. For those of you who don't know me, I have spent, I would say, the last 30 plus years in some corporate and nonprofit roles in my career. And if I back up prior to that, I actually started my career in the traditional fine arts. So I went to post-secondary school, studying fine arts, studying photography. I was one of the first women who did welded sculpture that I can remember. So there was a real drive for me to explore that side of me. I would say I'm creative in my DNA. And so that was a big part of my beginnings. I did a couple years at Red Deer College, and then I moved on to Emily Carr, which is now a university in Vancouver. For those of you who know it or maybe don't know what that is, it's a very prestigious art school. So getting in there was almost solidifying my my love for the arts. And so I didn't continue on. Like I said, I spent 30 years plus in the corporate and nonprofit setting. So I didn't carry on as a traditional artist. But the key here is that I always incorporated creativity into everything I did in my career. So fast forward to today, during the pandemic in 2021, I actually lost my job. And that was my opportunity that I saw to dive into entrepreneurship, start my own business. So I started Kim Westlund Incorporated, and I'm now a podcast host and a vision coach. And I help people create their vision and bring it to life. So, and also teach creativity. So there's a lot of things on the go, but that's where I'm at. And that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, this is so awesome because I feel like, so this is reminding me of a story I heard about Michelangelo talking about creativity, where he used to always say, like, most people see a block of rock. I see the sculpture inside, and my job is to reveal the beauty inside. And when I heard that, I was like, this is so, it really resonated with me because not everybody sees the beauty in the rock. I think this is a unique gift that he had and other sculptors have in like seeing things that other people don't see. And so for me, creativity really has always been rooted in that, this ability to like see things that other people don't see. And it's interesting because in your intro, Kim, you used the word vision. And I think that there is a strong connection between this concept of vision and then like bringing things to life. If we don't have the vision, then what can we bring to life? So I would love to hear a little bit more about your journey with like vision and creativity, and then also how you help your clients connect those two dots.
Yeah, well, you actually did ask me, why is creativity important to me? So maybe I'll start there. Like I said, I'm a naturally creative person. I identified that very early on. But what I've realized over time is that creativity has actually allowed me to reinvent myself several times in my career. So I feel like I can come up with creative and unique ideas at any time. And that's not to say I haven't struggled with ideas and things like that, but because I am creative in my nature, I always see a possibility. I always see, like, how can we explore going a little further? How can we maybe look at something differently and take a chance? You mentioned my career and maybe some examples. And when I was thinking about this, I actually realized that in numerous roles I've had, they've been almost like a blank canvas. I've been handed opportunities to create something from scratch. And I think a lot of people that would maybe rattle, because what do you do? I go, okay, I have nothing to start with here. But for me in particular, I loved it. I loved being handed an opportunity that I could craft, create, make my own, kind of put my stamp on it, shift it, maybe do something completely different. And that was very, very appealing to me. So, for instance, when I went into one of my theater roles, I spent over 20 years in the live theater industry. And I was given an opportunity when the Jubilee Auditorium was reopening here in Calgary to come in with a clean slate, do whatever you build this however you want. The front of house operations is yours. And I thought, wow, when in your life can you actually walk into a role and just create something from scratch? Now, granted, I was given that opportunity. I didn't walk in and just do it. So it was a wonderful, wonderful way to just kind of dig into that art and to think about what was possible. Because I'm actually, and maybe for those of you thinking, what is creativity? I'll maybe just quickly touch on that.
Yeah.
What is it? Because so many people think of just art, like painting a pretty picture or, welding a sculpture like I used to do, or photography, which I was big time into. It's actually, if I'm going to just simply define it, it's solving problems in new ways. So that may be a bit of a mind shift for some people listening in, but that's simply what it is. So anybody, in my opinion, can be creative.
Okay, there's so many things there. Okay, so where I want to go first is with so you use the phrase creative nature for your, and so for the peeps watching who don't know me, I'm all about personal branding and authenticity. And so I believe that everyone has a creative nature. It's just not that everybody's creative nature looks the same. And so when you look at Kim's definition of solving problems in new ways, there's problems that we get excited about solving, and there's problems we don't get excited about solving.
True.
Some people might have like a blank canvas, like I'm thinking literally a blank canvas in front of them, and be like, oh my gosh, look at all the potential for this, and get excited about painting that. And some people will look at that and be like, what? I don't know what to do with this. Some people might take front of house operations and be like, yes, this is so exciting. I would love to create this. And some people will be like, that sounds like the worst.
Totally.
What are your thoughts, Kim, on the concept of a creative nature? And are there people who are just innately creative and people who are not? Or are there some things that we can do to like ignite our own unique brand of creativity?
I agree with you. I think absolutely everybody can be creative. And I really want to challenge who's ever listening today. If you've always been one of those people that have said, no, not me, I'm not creative, I'm going to push back and say, but you may be. So in order to kind of explore being a creative person or maybe tapping into that creativity, I think probably the first thing that comes to mind for me is curiosity. I think for me, it's been such an amazing skill and tool that I have used. And not everybody uses that tool effectively. But if you actually take a look around you, and even another key is slowing down and just literally taking a good look around you. What exists? I think sometimes we just get into this mode of being on the treadmill and just kind of doing and being the same thing every single day. But when we actually slow down and we start asking some interesting questions, and they don't have to be complicated, the who, what, when, where, why, what we actually can start looking at things differently around us. And that could be in your place of work. Like you think, well, I got nothing interesting. When going in a place of work, everything looks the same every day. I'm just doing my job. But if you go in with an intentional attitude of saying, okay, I'm going to look around me today differently. Maybe I'm going to talk to somebody I don't normally talk to. Maybe I'm going to sit in the lunchroom if they have a lunchroom, or I'm going to engage with somebody I don't normally engage with, or I'm going to ask a different kind of question, or explore something I don't normally do. That's the starting point to being or adopting a little more of a creative mindset and a creative attitude. I think too, we've lost a little bit of, in our work environments, or just going to work and doing the humdrum every day, we've lost some fun in what we do. And I think having some fun and approaching things with a little bit of play can go a long way. And you might think, well, that's ridiculous. That's crazy. What do you mean by play? I'm serious. I'm an adult here. I go to work and I do my job. I play with my kids at home, but I don't play at work. And I think that is the missed opportunity. I think play and fun, and it's associated with de-stressing almost, and having that little bit of freedom to free up your brain and to free up your world around you. You can start seeing things a little differently. And so those are just like two quick little ways, or three, slowing down as well, to spark a little bit of a different environment around yourself. It's not complicated. And I think a lot of people just have maybe gotten into a rut of what creativity is. And it really is anything that any one of the listeners can start adopting if they do it intentionally.
Oh, I want to touch on this bit about fun, because I can't remember if I've shared this on the show before, but at the beginning of the summer, I took my 5-year-old son to the water park, because the point of a water park is to run through and play in the water. And to me, that's fun. Right? And we went with one of his schoolmates, and she was running around all through the, and Nicholas didn't want to do it. Sat on the picnic blanket and counted pine cones. And he's kind of a math guy, for those of you who watch the show. And I asked him, like, you don't want to run through the water? And he's like, no. And then I thought about it for a second, and I'm like, okay, just because this is fun for me doesn't mean that's fun for him. And so I asked him, I'm like, are you having fun? And he was like, yeah. I was like, awesome.
Counting those pine cones.
That's the point, right? And so, and this is the thing too, I think from a creativity perspective, we don't necessarily give other people enough permission in that arena too, because things that are I always say, thank God for the accountants, right? The people who think numbers are fun, because I don't think numbers are fun. I think numbers are work. And if I can give that work, which is work to me, to somebody who has fun with it, everybody wins. And so when we think about this concept of fun or play at work, I think if we're too hard coded with our definition of play, like swinging on a swing or sliding on a slide, which is what we might define play as from a childhood perspective, that's not really the point. It's to look at, I had this conversation also once with my husband, and he's more of a data science-y kind of guy as well.
The numbers
thing come from. It doesn't come from me. But he is like, there's these people at work, and this guy's having a problem with this guy. And I just hate spending my mental calories, which is a phrase I use, on people problems. And I was like, this is so interesting, because for me, that's the most fun place I can spend my calories, because I get naturally curious about what's going on with this person and what's going on in this relationship between these two people, and why do I have such a problem with this person? Like, what is it? It's my brain naturally defaults there from a curiosity perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is, even Kim, when you say get curious, right? Get curious about what you're curious about.
Yeah,
right? There are things
exactly.
that we all naturally default to in our realm of curiosity. And it's not about me saying, like, I wonder how I can make the most delicious beer, right? Like, that is not something I wonder about. Therefore,
Yeah.
I don't have a brewery. I like to drink delicious beer, but I will never be the one who makes it. Right? And these are things to pay attention to, because when we are creating opportunities for ourselves and for others, we have to be able to pay attention. We have to have awareness of what is our brand of creativity, and how do I go and create that instead of like just going to a job because I have to go to a job. Chris is sharing a great comment here. Fun and play are essential. Humor in everything. Great way to break down barriers, bond with colleagues, and make challenges more manageable. And I don't know about you, Kim, but when I read that, I'm like, heck yeah, that sounds great from a work perspective, right? We're always dealing with challenges. We're always dealing with communication barriers. We're always looking for ways to bond with our colleagues. And yet we leave fun and play for our home life, and it doesn't really optimize what we could do at work.
I think we underestimate the power of play, because it's not just about play, like you said, traditional play, swinging on a swing. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about actually connecting play with de-stressing and creating an environment where we actually can be in a creative state. We can't be in stress and be creative at the same time. That's the big problem here. There's actually science behind that. When our brains, there's actually a part of our brain that shrinks when we are experiencing too much stress, anxiety, and those kinds of emotions, those high emotions. Parts of our brain literally shrink. It's called the hippocampus. And that part of our brain, when it shrinks, there is scientific proof that that is the part of the brain that actually controls your imagination, which of course is associated with creativity. So when you think about it, play is essential to any kind of work environment. And that could come in so many different forms. Like, we're not going to suggest the swinging on the swing unless you really want to. But you could, I suggest storytelling even. As a leader, say if you're a leader of your organization, you are probably tasked with figuring out, or should be tasked with figuring out, how to create an environment for creativity. How do you create an environment to encourage a little bit of downtime, play, connection, all those things that really, really play hand in hand with being a more creative person. So, that's just one example. Storytelling is a wonderful way. And of course, as the leader, you want to be setting the example. If nobody really, really, truly knows you, maybe sharing a little bit of your story, or sharing a little bit. Maybe you never tell what you do on the weekends. Maybe you want to share with your team, hey, I did this weekend. Has anybody ever done this? Or I went skydiving, or I did this. Those are the kinds of things that create an atmosphere of fun and downtime, and it kind of sets people at ease, and it creates an environment where people want to be there, and it just automatically leads to a more creative mindset.
Mm-hmm. This is making me think of my cardio dance class. So like when I worked in corporate, I would always invite my coworkers to come and try my cardio dance class. And some people would and some people wouldn't. But one of the things that my brain is connecting dots in right now is that I feel like a lot of times we think work and fun aren't the same thing. Right? So there's work and there's fun. And we influence fun into our days, and then we work. But when I think about my cardio dance class, when I teach that, it's fun for me. It's fun. I get to sing along to all my favorite songs. I get to move my body. I get to hang out with peeps that I like. All of that is fun. And it is work because I do it, and I'm responsible for making the playlist and teaching the class and sending out invites and managing Zoom, and like it's work, but it is fun work. And so I think there's also a conversation here on splitting or even just exploring our definitions in our work and in our life, of we saying like, my husband and I were digging a trench in front of our house for some concrete. It's not the most fun activity to do. I mean, there might be people who think that is fun. So we did it for one afternoon, and we were just exhausted, and we were both like, ugh. And the next day when we went out to do it, I brought my playlist. So I was like, well, we might as well have music while we do this. And my husband and I are both fans of Queen. So put on this like Queen playlist. And you know how much easier it felt to do the digging? One, we dug like way faster because you're trying to like dig to the tempo of the music, which I wouldn't recommend Queen for that because it's actually a little too fast. But it felt so much more fun, and it felt easier. And so when you combine work and fun, then there's some new opportunities. But Kim, I'd love to go in this direction with the fun and the work, because not everyone has fun the same way. And we're like working together in teams to get work done. So any thoughts on like how we can address this as a team to try and incorporate fun when maybe fun isn't the same for every person?
Yeah, I have a couple of different thoughts there, because, and they're very different streams of thought. The first one, I would actually ask you, are you enjoying generally what you're doing? Now, that's a pretty heavy question, because creativity requires inspiration. And if you are not in a role where you are continually inspired and lit up and doing something that truly interests you, I think that's almost a red flag, like, to be paid attention to. So if you're going to work every day and you're struggling through the work, number one, I would ask myself, am where I'm supposed to be? Because creativity will never exist in a place that you aren't supposed to be. That's a struggle every single day. So, you're just not going to light up. You're going to be bored. You're going to be fighting that. And you and I have talked a little bit in the past about values. If your values are not aligned with the organization or the environment that you find yourself in, you're going to have an internal battle going on. So that's my first thought. Question, look at the bigger picture. Is this where I'm supposed to be? The other stream is, if it is where you're supposed to be, and you're struggling with maybe just some day-to-day ways of having more creativity with your team, I would make it a group effort. I would bring up some suggestions. I would pose some ideas to the team if that's where the struggle is. And I think having that personal connection is really where it's at. You want to build trust and safety, because when there's trust and safety on your team, that's where we kind of maybe let our hair down a little, so to speak, and we come up with some maybe edgy ideas, and we're maybe a little more brave to share them. And those are all parts of creativity that need to happen. But if we don't feel safe in our environment because we don't know our colleagues very well, and we're struggling with getting to know them, because we're in this, I feel like we're in this space in this world where we're under so much pressure to produce. And there's just this, we go into work and it's head down and it's just produce. And we're forgetting the other parts of work, which is connecting and being human beings together. And that goes a long way, probably further than what we give it credit for. But those are the two thoughts I have in that area, for sure.
I think this is similar to the concept of fun and work when we're talking about being productive versus connecting. This is something I come across all of the time, because 100%, no word of a lie, connecting is the number one most productive thing I do. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the most productive when you're learning about people from a sales perspective. It's most productive when you're learning about people from a community perspective. It's most productive when you're learning about target clients from a marketing perspective. It's most productive when you're learning about your employees from a leadership perspective. Like, literally, it is the most productive thing that I
gets
do.
you out of your own head, right?
Mm-hmm.
It stops that isolation. Sometimes creativity is born out of literally interacting with somebody else. I can't tell you how many ideas I've come up with just through general conversation. Somebody will say something, oh, I never thought of that, and I'll jot it down, and I'll think. It just gets you expanding what you already know into another area. So absolutely, community connecting is crucial for creativity.
Yeah. And this is what Inger is sharing as well. Hi, Inger. Creativity requires inspiration. Yes. And this is also the interesting thing I talk about a lot with my clients is what inspires you? What literally I cannot find inspiration by myself. I do not get inspired by myself. I don't get inspired by journaling. I don't get inspired by taking a walk in nature. And it's not that these things are bad and they don't inspire other people. They just don't inspire me. Conversations with people inspire me. And so when you know these types of things about your team, about yourself, importantly, or about your team members, if you're a leader, then you have the ability to create spaces where that is possible. You have teammates who like to journal and feel inspired by writing, give them space for that. If you have people who are inspired by walking in nature, give them space for that. If you have people who are inspired by conversation, give them space for that. And being inspired by conversation doesn't necessarily happen in a meeting that has an agenda and you have to reach all of these things, which is quite honestly one of the reasons why I love this show, is because it is a place. If any of you are in the chat and you're like, I need a place to just like explore through conversation, please contact me. You can come be on this show. This is what it's for. But it's not the right thing for all people. Finding that space for fun and inspiration is about knowing yourself and knowing that your way isn't the way that everyone is going to be inspired.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a key point here. I think you really have to know you. And if you have, maybe you don't even know what inspires you. Could that even be a fact? Maybe you've been ticking along at it on humdrum for so long that you don't even understand what inspires you anymore. You're just really in a rut. I've talked to numerous people in the last 2.5 years of building this business of just feeling like they've lost their passion. They've lost their drive, and of course creativity non-existent in that case. And so sometimes we have to look at what is actually stopping creativity in our lives and in our careers, in our work, in our everyday things that we're doing. And there's many different things that can stop creativity, but I think one of the big ones is fear. Fear is a real driver in people's lives, and can be. I mean, we've all experienced fear to some degree. But I think, again, you said about creating an environment where we can be creative. People want to be able to feel free enough to step out, speak up, and creativity requires that. It requires bravery. Creativity requires you using your voice and carving a new path. Sometimes when you dig in and you think, what really is it? Like, what am I trying to do here with being creative? It's about being confident enough in what you're doing and how you're doing it that you have the confidence and the boldness to take a step and say, I believe in this. I feel good about this. But when fear gets in the way, that can really stop a lot of that from happening, and maybe afraid of what people will think, or afraid of people are going to think my ideas are stupid or goofy or whatever maybe that narrative may be for you. But that's really important that we address what may be stopping us from diving into these situations. I'll maybe just tell a quick personal story. When I began my business back in 2021, and I was going through, like I said, I lost my job. So that was a major deal for me. That was a major life circumstance. It was rather devastating. And through losing my job, I had also gotten engaged recently. It's a lot going on. I was set to be married a few months after, and I had been a single parent for 17 years. So it was a big deal, big life change for me. And I was, through losing my job, I was starting a new business, but I had also taken on this house build that I was now set to lose a whole ton of money. And so I had stress up to here. I was I was really in a stressed out state. And I remember trying to build my business and get it going, like kind of get some, what am I doing here? I need to get things going. I couldn't put two thoughts together creatively. And like I said, normally that is not an issue with me. I can come up with ideas and, oh, let's try this, and this. I was stuck, like super stuck, because there was so much stress and so much fear of I didn't know what was going to happen to me and in this circumstance. So until I stopped and I actually addressed what was going on with me, what was this all like? I knew there was fear. I knew obviously what was happening, but it was how I was approaching it that I needed to slow down and stop and go, okay, wait a minute. It's going to be okay. There's going to be a way through. I had to kind of shift my mindset and I had to work through those fears and where I was at to get to a place where I could actually put two thoughts together and start having a little bit of momentum in building my business. And I say that because there may be somebody out there today just is disconnected with this idea of creativity. And we all experience those times, but I think doing the work, looking at yourself, taking that introspective look and thinking, okay, do I have an excessive amount of stress in my life? That could be the very reason that you go to work and you just are feeling unfulfilled and not able to think of new ideas. That could be one of the major contributing factors.
Yeah.
Even just self-care, just balancing things in your life, not looking after yourself. That's a huge one. Like there's a real practical side to this. And even just not having enough time in the day and prioritizing things properly, like we can get really, really super practical today. And you might think, wow, I never thought how that could be connected to my creativity, but it actually is.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love this. And Amber is sharing, I believe fear gets in the way of many people's creativity. And one of the things that came up for me, Kim, when we were talking about fear is responsibility. And so when you were talking about fear, and even in your story, I'm like, there's like so much responsibility, right? I have responsibility of this, and a lot of people have fiscal responsibilities that they will choose to do a job that they hate and does not ignite their creativity because that is responsible. So in your experience, how does this narrative of responsible, because I also see like when we go to work, we're responsible adults, right? I be responsible.
Right.
Responsible and creativity aren't, well, are they connected? Is one, can they be connected? Is this a connection we can make to improve our relationship with both responsibility and creativity?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say stop looking for the opportunity in your future to be creative. You got to start right here, right now. And you may be in a crappy job. You may be in a job you can't stand. You may think, what am I doing here? I never thought I would end up being here. But this is so centered around mindset and having and adopting and shifting the mindset to embrace the season you're in. And I had to do this as a single parent. I was a single parent for 17 years and I had to find a way. I went through some pretty horrific circumstances and not comfortable. But I found a way to shift my mindset into a place where no matter what job I had, and some of them I was ready to move on. Like, trust me, I was just, okay, we're good. But I had to find ways in that opportunity to be creative, to be the best I could be, and to work out my giftings and my strengths within that job. Because I'm going to say some of the jobs I've had that I didn't particularly care for, some of those skills I actually found very beneficial in the future, but I didn't see it at the time. So I think giving yourself a little grace that where you're at, maybe where you're just supposed to be for this moment in time, and accepting that and understanding that, but knowing that this is also helping lay a foundation for where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
If we stay in a place of, I hate this job, I hate my coworkers, I hate my boss, like whatever it is, right? If we stay in that place, that is not going to it would actually, we'll probably end up staying there a whole lot longer before we move ahead, right? We've got to get to a place that is not going to serve you in the long run. Getting a great attitude, getting to a place where you're taking some of that narrative out and you're de-stressing and you're going to a place of work with a grateful heart and some thankfulness, I almost guarantee you're going to find that things will start shifting because your mindset and your outlook is shifting. And creativity is all a part of that. It plays a factor in all of that. You don't know who's watching you in this role. You don't know what opportunities may come up. So maybe that was a word of inspiration for somebody today, but man, I've been there and continue to be there some days where you just struggle through, but just intentionally having that attitude of, you know what? Nope. Today I'm going to do the best I can do. I'm going to literally show up the best I know to show up, and I'm going to believe for the best down the road.
I think this is, so I have an example I've shared it on the show before, but when I was in corporate, I was in an office with my HR manager and the CEO, and I don't remember what we were talking about, but what was going on in my head was that I just want to coach people, right? Like that's what I like. I like watching the people succeed and like all this is where my passion lies. And almost immediately I was like, I have a whole bunch of people that I manage at this job. What if I looked at it as if these are the people I get to coach? And it didn't last long term because I still ended up leaving, but it changed drastically my experience of going to work. And that was, I love what Amber is saying here about you are entirely responsible for your own creativity. That was me thinking creatively about how I can get more of what I love in my job, which is so funny because I always spent so much time with my employees. I'm like, what do you love and what do you loathe? And how can we spend time creating more time for what you love? And it was game changer when I did it on myself. But you flip your fear and you focus on creating your own path. And this, like, this piece about creation is, I mean, for me anyway, is very heavily tied into creativity. What do you want to create? What do you see in that piece of marble that you want to carve? It's not the same thing that I see. It's not the same thing that Kim sees. It's something that you uniquely see. And how can you go and create that for yourself?
I love your example of coaching because I did something very similar. You just reminded me when I was in that role of managing a big front of house staff and I was building that, but I also knew there was more for me, but I knew that I was where I was supposed to be at the moment, but I actually started a lunch and learn. I started covering books together before that was even a popular thing. We were doing these kind of book studies on leadership and self-development, and the staff would get excited about that. I started also a 2-day-a-week boot camp for those that wanted to come in, and we all paid a small fee, and we got together and we did a boot camp twice a week. So there were things that didn't exist before that I'm like, okay, that I'm super interested in that. I need boot camp. I need to exercise. Why can't I incorporate it into my day and make it a work thing, a fun work thing where I create all these cool 80s playlists to go with, little Bon Jovi on there and make it fun, right? Like you could literally take something that, you think, how can that be fun? You can start doing things, incorporating little aspects of you and your personality into it. And all of a sudden people are following and going, I like her. I like him. That's cool.
And like when it's something you come up with, it's so powerful for you as well, right? Like I'm thinking of, I have a friend on LinkedIn he's a marketing guy, but he loves music. And so he just created this LinkedIn live show that's like a music, it's like he's a radio DJ and he gets to like curate playlists and because that's fun for him. And it's not related to his job, but kind of is because it increases his visibility online. But like, it's his version of fun. Although he didn't play my recording, Eric, today, or my request. What's up with that? Anyway, next time. But it also reminds me, like, we can do this at any time. I think a lot of times too, if we're thinking about, oh, we're gonna have this creativity. We've talked about a lot of leadership versions of that, right? Like what we can create for a team. When I was 23 years old, I had my first corporate job ever in a huge organization. So it's like a corporate office, 800 people, and I'm the little plebe at the bottom of the totem pole.
Been there, done that. Yes.
I think most of us have. And movement is a big thing for me. And if I'm like too sedentary for too long, my inspiration just goes, wow. And so I asked, I was talking at lunch with one of the other ladies in my department, and she's like, oh, yeah, it'd be so fun if we just had like a thing that we could go to at lunch and we could get movement. And so I, 23 years old, maybe I was 24, created the Passport to Fitness program. And we printed out these we're at marketing department, right? So we print stuff, little passports that everybody got, and they had the date for every month, and every month you got a passport. And every day you came, you got a stamp. And we took advantage of the training that different people in the literally 800 people in this corporate office. We had somebody who was a yoga teacher. We had somebody who was a strength trainer. I taught a dance class. We had someone who led just like a walking program. And every single Monday to Friday, we had an activity at lunch from anywhere from 30 minutes to 45 minutes. We started bringing in guest speakers to talk about nutrition and a whole bunch of stuff. And every month we gave away, HR gave me a tiny little budget. I think it was like $20 a month to give away a prize to the person who like participated the most. And like there were 100 people who like participated in different parts of the program throughout the corporate office. There were people who like never would dance, who came to the dance classes. There are people who had never tried yoga, who came to the yoga classes, because it's not like we're here in front of everyone. It's just these people, and it's mostly accountants that came to participate. But it was like such a great community building activity. And it was just me going out and saying, like, I have this idea. I think it could benefit the people. Can I try it? Like, I will run it. And they were like, yeah, go to town. And then once I had enough people, they were like, here's a little bit of money.
That's amazing. Well, you said something really key. And I think that's something to remember, which is that you just started. You did something, and it was little. So it was an idea, and you just thought, okay, well, let's just try it. Let's give it a shot. All of a sudden you got a budget. I don't ever remember having a budget for these things. So that was like a major win. That's like buy-in right there.
Yeah. So, well, and we would have donuts every Friday at the marketing team meeting. And I'm like, we're going to sit here and eat donuts as a team, but then we're going to sit. Like, what if we moved and then we didn't feel so bad about eating the donuts, because I have every intention of still eating the donuts. But yeah, anyone can do it. And I think too, this was something that came up for me earlier when we were chatting too, is about having this space where other people see it in you, right? Where people like it. I did get permission from HR to run the program, or at least to promote it through the like company channels.
Yeah.
Because literally I could have done a walking club at lunch without any permission. Right? Like, but I wanted to use the training rooms to do fitness things. So I got permission to do that. And I think there's this cool permission that each of us has that we can also give. So in my example, I'm taking the permission, but there's also a lot of permission we can give to the people around us to invite in those ideas that might just start, as Amber says. All great plans start with a small idea. So how can we support? So maybe from the support perspective, Kim, how can we support creativity in others and like taking those small ideas and maybe building them into something bigger?
Yeah, I think having just knowing there's creatives in the workplace, like there's people who consider themselves creative and non-creative. So how do we interact? How do we support each other in these times of trying to build something? And I'm just gonna a little stat here. Do you know 96%? I heard this somewhere. 96% of creatives leave their job after 5 years. So it's important that we support this, whether we feel creative or we don't feel creative. So whatever end of that you see yourself on, hanging around with a creative person will no doubt spark your own creativity. It will maybe ignite a little bit more in you. And of course, being the creative person will give you an opportunity, as long as there is that environment and that place to do so and be creative, will give you an opportunity to showcase and just run with it. It's a win-win. Mm-hmm. But I think understanding that there is so much diversity on teams, and that there is so much that we need to be aware of and mindful of, that not everybody's going to approach this in the same way, and maybe creating multiple channels of opportunities. Like, not everybody was probably going to want to do a dance class or a yoga class. What about having some kind of games or something completely different that people would engage with? Like, personally, I don't like karaoke. I don't know why. I would consider myself an extrovert. I did a video for with my staff one time to submit, and we did lip syncing and all that kind of stuff.
Was it for the Backstreet Boys concert?
No, it
was. We did this once at work. We were all trying to win tickets to the Backstreet Boys. We did not win, but
this was an extreme example of how to engage a team. We did a Bon Jovi video. I mentioned Bon Jovi. I'm a big Bon Jovi fan. And on the stage of the Jubilee, and we submitted it and we won, and they played it in front of their concert and blah, blah, blah. It was a big deal. But just having, I don't like karaoke for whatever reason. So I'm not going to engage with that freely. That's just, I would probably run in the opposite direction. Whereas, if it's something else, if it's some other kind of way to connect, like even a simple barbecue or other ways. So I think being really, really mindful of some creative ways to bring opportunities to your team and to those around you to be able to do that. I don't know if I answered your question. Did I answer your question?
I don't know. We've moved on. We've moved on in the conversation. This is how it happens here. But this is
you
an
gotta keep
interesting
us
point.
Creatives track, and because I could be shiny object syndrome.
Because this is why I think that most creatives leave a job, because a job is usually pretty structured, right? You come here and you do these things, and I don't want to do the same things for 5 years. Right? This is why it's really great for me as a coach and consultant, because I get to come in and look at things and solve problems and bring my creative tornado energy, and then not leave things in devastation, but leave things in this shaken up, new systematized way that's you can run with. And
yeah,
that's how I see myself. And that's what I've always enjoyed doing. That's why I like project work and events and things like that. Cause they have I do the thing and then I move on to the next thing. And
they're all different.
Right. And someone like that is not good in an accounting role where you have to do the same thing every day. And it's just, we need, yes, Amber, great way of saying it. We need more non-linear work and flexibility. And it's not that the linear work doesn't need to get done, but literally my son with his math, he loves linear things. Give that guy the linear things to do and give me the tornado creation things to do, and then we can all live happily together. I also just want to share, because Amber and I have a joint love of Lego. So her comment here is, I want every piece to bring the same excitement as a Lego build, or as close to it as possible in my field.
I love that.
And these are the things too to even pay attention to, right? Do you get that creative vibe when you're building something in Lego? Okay, great. What about that is tapping into my creativity? Do I really like following instructions? Do I really like seeing the beautiful thing at the end? Is this kind of the same as a project because I get to see a beautiful thing at the end? All of these things in our human experience are connected. And so when we have even one thing that we're like, oh yeah, I feel so creative when I'm doing that. This is why I love events, and I started doing in-person events again. And it's just like, yes, the like creation and the flow and like all of these things just feel really fun for me. And it makes me go back to my like days at the Brick, where I was the event planner when the Brick launched Cindy Crawford's line of furniture. And I remember like having to like manage her and all her security and the lines, and I had the walkie-talkie on my belt. And I was like, this is the life. And some people would hate that. But when all of us have those moments in our career, in our personal lives, in our play, where we can just take a moment to explore like, okay, what was driving that? It's probably not just that you're building Lego. What you experience when you're building Lego is a group of things. And if you can find other things or ways to ignite that group of things, or one of those group of things, in something that you have to do for work, then one, that's being creative. So now you've all of a sudden checked the box on being a creative. But it also gives you more space to turn that work into something that's a little more fun.
I agree. And what a great example of Lego, because all of us are going to build it a little differently. And like you said, the process of building Lego, I bet every single person, maybe barring, maybe a very small percentage, would be excited to see Lego, because it's, number one, connected to our childhood play and fun times, more or less, like for the vast majority. I'm not speaking for everyone, but having that experience to sit down, but we would all be doing it differently. Some would throw out the instructions. Some would embrace the instructions. I would not want to even look at the instructions. I would just start diving in and start putting things together and see what comes of it. Like, it's such a great example, and it's such an important, like, we probably just gave somebody an idea for their team.
My son built this one.
Lego.
My son built this one after seeing like the first two patterns. So it's like a rainbow wall, right? So there's like two patterns that rotate. And after he saw the patterns, he's like, I can do that. And he built the rest of it. I mean, technically, he didn't need the instructions because they were just repeatable. And I think he was like 3 years old. He was like, I can build that. I think there's like that kid energy too that comes with creativity with that. I can do that. That
yes.
A lot of times we maybe don't have in our adult lives, which I think even for me, it's great when you have those moments of like, I did that.
Exactly. Well, I just have to mention, and I hope it's okay to mention it, you said events, and I thought of an event that I have coming up on Tuesday. And it's called Creativity and Connection. And it's right like in this wheelhouse of conversation. How do you creatively connect with people? And again, in person, live, and getting that opportunity to explore all of these things. How do we, because again, that connection piece is so huge, like we've been talking about. So I hope that maybe I can even share that out with your viewers at the end or whatever. But it just is such a great opportunity for those that are looking for that live and in-person experience to explore that in creativity and connection.
Mm-hmm. So that's in Calgary, folks.
That is in Calgary.
Have some international audience joining us. So if you're not in Calgary, if you want to come to Calgary for Tuesday, you can get in on it. Yes, Kim, actually, if you have a link for that, we'll make sure it gets in the quote unquote show notes in the chat for you all after, so you can check that out and see. And this is a thing too, I feel, about events. I was telling someone else lately about my LinkedIn local that I ran, and the format and all these things, and I was like, it was so good. The whole point was for people to feel connected by the time that they left, and that totally happened. And like now I see all like people who are connected with each other on LinkedIn and like supporting each other in things, and I'm like, these people were strangers to each other before that event, and that was the point, to create connection.
Love that.
And so it was so amazing. But it was, now I got excited again and I had no idea where I was going with that.
Creative.
Here's where I was going with this, is that this isn't like, I can uniquely do that because I have the intention of doing that. If you too have the intention of doing that, you can create something similar. This isn't a like, we're going to hold hostage this concept of like creativity and connection, because we're peeps that care about creativity and connection. So if one of the things you take away is like, how could I create more connection through creativity? And you have a way to do it. One, we would love to hear about it. And two, do it. Try it. Okay?
Yes.
For those of you who know me, I'm an experimenter, right? Like, do it, try it. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, don't do it again. It's fine. Right? But if you do it and you see how it feels for you and you see how it feels for others, then all of a sudden work becomes fun. And now I'm like, well, I wish I could do a LinkedIn local every week, but I don't have time for that. So they're once a month. But like, when it's so fun that you wish you could do it more, then like, friends, this is the goal. And businesses, if you're looking at this from a business perspective, and we go back to that definition we created of solving problems in new ways, we are living in a world of what my friend Lenwood Ross likes to call wicked problems. These are problems we have not had to solve before. And if you are trying to solve problems that you have not solved before, you got to have new ways to do it. Which means you have to find new ways to ignite and set ablaze the creativity in your organization. And if you're going to do that, you should have a conversation with Kim. You should have a conversation with me if you're looking to focus on your marketing department. And it's available. It is available. The raw fuel is there. It just takes a focus and an intention to create space for creativity at work.
I just want to say, it's fast becoming the number one skill from CEOs, from business owners in their teams. It is fast becoming, it's on the fast track to being number one.
And it gives us our superhero capes, as Amber says, and not just individual superhero capes, but then your organization becomes the Avengers and you're battling everything together. And it's just better for belonging. It's better for retention. It's better for employee engagement. It is better for performance. It is better for ROI. It is better for revenue. It is literally better for all of the things.
Absolutely.
So Kim, before we wrap up today, I told you we would go for an hour and you'd be like, oh,
we did.
Sure? Yeah, we do. This is how we do here. Where is the best place for people to find you, Kim?
Just go right over to kimwestlund.ca. There's links to brand new podcast that's going to be launched here very soon, talking about creating your vision and some of the offerings that I have around vision coaching. So thanks so much. Tracy, this is so much fun.
I may or may not be on a podcast episode coming to you soon.
Good plug. I love it. Exactly. Stay tuned.
Okay, I have one last important question for you, Kim, because you mentioned Bon Jovi a couple of times. So I need you to get in on this. For those of you who don't know, my husband and I have an ongoing poll of which is the best Bon Jovi song. Your options are Living on a Prayer or Wanted Dead or Alive. So Kim, what is your vote?
Living on a Prayer all day long.
So for those of you who don't know, that's Team Tracy. So thank you, Kim, for being on Team Tracy. If you too are a fan of Bon Jovi, give me your vote because, okay, I'm just going to share this. Then we're going to run out of time. But my plan for when I'm no longer with the worldly plane is to have my ashes pressed into a record of Living on a Prayer. Because you can do that. And so I told my husband, I'm like, okay, when we die, I should become Living on a Prayer and you should become Wanted. And we can give it to our grandchildren and see who plays it the most. And then we'll know for sure. Amber's voting for Living on a Prayer too. Thanks, friends. Team Tracy for the win. Awesome. Anyway, fun facts about Tracy's retirement plans. Thank you, everyone, for joining the conversation today. As we always say on this show, it's great to get into one conversation, but one conversation is not going to take you where you want to go. So if you are looking to ignite your own creativity, or you are looking to ignite the creativity on your team at work, get connected to Kim, get connected to me, get connected to each other in the chat, and stay in the conversation, because this isn't a light switch where we just turn it on, unfortunately. Thank you, Kim, so much for all your contribution today. Thank you, Amber, Inger, Chris, and Kristen in the chat for all of your lovely thoughts. Thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.